The Xianzhou Alliance are led by a group of generals, each renowned for different things. Some are straight up combatants, while others are craftsmen or divinators. While they each have pretty standard sounding roles, each of the generals are nothing short of insane. They are all extremely powerful and can easily fight high level opponents if they wished. So if this group is filled with such capable powerhouses, why is Jing Yuan there? He seems rather aloof and uncaring, and even during a discussion with the other generals, he doesn't take center stage, choosing to contribute from the background. Even Fu Xuan, his own subordinate, is trying to take his position. The truth, however, is that Jing Yuan more than lives up to his position, and in this video, I'll share with you why I think Jing Yuan more than deserves the title of the Divine Foresight. Before we discuss that in more detail though, if you want to see more Honkai Star Rail content, do consider subscribing to the channel. Let's start this conversation with the generals first because they will act as the baselines of what we should or can expect from Jing Yuan. Understanding how capable and overpowered the other generals are will give you a better appreciation for Jing Yuan's own accomplishments. The Arbiter generals are the leaders of the Cloud Knights on their respective ships. They are powerful individuals who possess formidable gifts granted to them by Lan themselves, though whether this means they are emanators is kinda debatable, but many people have claimed that they are. They are functionally the leaders and highest ranking person on each world ship, second only to the Marshal. Every commission ultimately reports to the general, but on paper, the governing body of the xianzhou ships is actually made up of the 6 charioteers. Leaders from each commission, but I'm not gonna get into that as it's different for each ship. The generals we've met so far all show some innate talent or ability within a particular area, and as I've mentioned, all have been granted a powerful spirit to aid them. Feixiao is an exceptionally powerful combatant able to fire off nuclear level arrows and is assisted by the Windwolf, the Flying Aureus. Huaiyan is a legendary craftsman who has forged countless weapons and is a great example of fear the old man in an occupation where people die young. And then you have the seer strategist, Yao Guang, who is so proficient at divination that she's able to predict the movements of people light years away from her up to the very second. All of them seem like larger-than-life individuals, which makes it a bit odd when you put Jing Yuan next to them. He appears like this stereotypical daydreamer, choosing to take things slow and steady rather than have any sense of urgency, especially for a general. The side-by-side shot of his daily routine when compared to feixiao certainly makes you question how this intern of the High Cloud Quintet managed to rise to such a prominent position. But even as a young xianzhou native, he has made quite a name for himself even before taking on the Cloud General position. Generally speaking, we don't really know too much about Jing Yuan's past, but there are some notable accomplishments that we can talk about. Firstly, Jing Yuan was a member of the High Cloud Quintet, one of the most famous and successful strike teams in all of the Xianzhou Alliance. I won't go into their accomplishments or downfall, but just know that they were highly regarded and viewed as literal heroes across the entire alliance. Despite being the youngest and likely the most inexperienced member, he stood on equal ground with powerhouses like Jing Liu, Dan Feng, and Blade, all of whom were accomplished in their own right. While Jing Liu brought unfettered power to the team and Dan Feng was their Cloud Him magic caster, Jing Yuan was touted as their master strategist, coming up with plans and contingencies. This somewhat hints at his actual area of expertise, but more on that later. He was also once the apprentice of arguably the strongest sword champion the Luofu has ever produced, Jing Liu. Years later, Jing Yuan was also the one who had managed to capture Jing Liu after she had gone berserk following being Mara-struck, though there's hints that she might have allowed him to do so. Jing Yuan was also the Luofu ringmaster several centuries ago and has been involved in numerous skirmishes with the denizens of Abundance, which speaks to his combat abilities. Now, admittedly, that's not a lot to go on, but are arguably some rather impressive accomplishments given they were achieved when he was still relatively young. As a general, Jing Yuan has more than once showed his strategic prowess, though it might not be as obvious as you might think. His presence is often felt but not seen, as Jing Yuan is an exceptionally capable strategist and leader rather than a frontline combatant. While someone like feixiao overwhelms her opponents with pure force and precision of attacks, Jing Yuan, at least to me, is more efficient in managing resources to achieve a particular goal. If you're familiar with the Warhammer 40k universe, I sort of see Jing Yuan being somewhat similar to Robute Guilliman, with his superpower being just god-level organizational skills. He's the type to defeat his opponents before they even make their first move, having planned out each action or attack far in advance with plenty of contingencies. This is precisely why his title is the Divine Foresight. He foresees battles and actions before they even happen and is always 10 steps ahead of his opponents. This isn't the same as divination, where he could be seeing the literal future like Yao Guang, but more akin to next level preparedness. Jing Yuan is basically prep time Batman. That said, it doesn't mean that he is weak or shies away from the front line. Far from it. I mean, have you seen what the Lightning Lord can do? Aside from that, he is also a pretty capable leader, which again, it might not be too obvious from the offset. He often delegates his work efficiently to his subordinates and steps in only when he absolutely needs to. This doesn't mean that he's lazy, but knows that a leader in such a position can't be in all places at once, and efficiently uses his team to ensure every possibility is covered. To do this, he needs to fully trust his team and often delegates authority to people like Yan Qing and Fu Xuan, giving them freedom and room to accomplish their tasks, all the while still being in control. While it might seem like he's passing around work like Jing Cui, he is constantly aware of what is happening, and we see this each time a story wraps up in the xianzhou Luofu. Jing Yuan always appears at the end, explaining what has happened and revealing he was aware of everything. He only ever steps in if and when he needs to and never gets in the way of his subordinates. A good example of his general awareness was at the end of the 2.5 story, where Ling Sha reveals to the preceptors that Jing Yuan was aware of everything that was happening. Speaking of Ling Sha, the new Cauldron Master believed for a long time that Jing Yuan had exiled her master due to some political reason, but in truth, there were other things happening in the background. In this conversation, even Ling Sha admits Jing Yuan was able to talk no jutsu his way out of having her hate him once she was made aware of the situation. In one fell swoop, he turned a potential dissenter into a capable ally. Now, it might appear that Jing Yuan is a shrewd strategist, and he's really only doing these things to add to the pieces on his chessboard. It's possible that Jing Yuan might be one of those calculating and uncaring leaders that just manipulate their team and is willing to sacrifice them if the need is great enough. However, each time the situation has become dire, Jing Yuan is more than happy to step in and carry the weight of the burden himself. We can see this when he willingly chose to be the bait for Fantilia, holding her down so that Dan Heng could deliver an attack. Jing Yuan is the type of leader that lets the results speak for themselves, and if everything is going well, he doesn't even appear at all, allowing his subordinates to claim the glory. This to me is the earmark of a true leader, one that enables and lifts their team rather than just use them as pawns for their ambition. His strategic mind and prowess for tactics, whether in battle or politics, is why he clearly deserves the title of the Divine Foresight, being able to foresee the outcomes of conflicts well before other people can. This particular seat is said to be described by actions that are wise and brave, both of which I think Jing Yuan has clearly lived up to. Now, why did I dedicate an entire video to Jing Yuan of all people? He's not necessarily a new character, and often his contributions are behind the scenes and isn't as flashy as some others. Why did I end up dedicating a whole video seemingly to justify why he is a general? To be honest, it's because of that last scene in the 2.5 story where all the generals were discussing Yao Guang's findings. All the generals were front and center, but Jing Yuan was generally quiet, speaking only when he has to. This made me realize that Jing Yuan has mostly been like that in most of his appearances, and made me start wondering why such a seemingly timid person would be trusted with the seat of an Arbiter general. But the more I looked into his activities and past and how he operates, the more it made sense. He is not a flashy combatant like feixiao or a decorated general with years of experience like huaiyan, but rather he is just an effective leader. One that takes the limelight only when needed, but is more than happy to let his team carry out the task because inherently he trusts them. He is someone who gets stronger as more capable people flock under his leadership, and this is somewhat reflected even in his in-game character. As more characters and artifacts get released, Jing Yuan has only gotten better since his release as a playable character. I felt Jing Yuan went pretty unnoticed and maybe even looked down on in the lore, so I wanted to just share my thoughts about it. Leaders such as this are few and far apart, and truthfully, maybe I'm just dealing with some stuff at work with shitty bosses and leaders. Anyways, I think this more than explains why I think Jing Yuan lives up to his title as the seat of the divine foresight. Maybe in the future I'll cover the other generals individually when more lore comes up, and if you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comments. If you found the video entertaining and also like Jing Yuan, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and as usual, have a nice day.